So, welcome everybody, and thank you for attending this webcast. My name is Paul Willett. I work as an offering manager for service contracts and service offerings for Honeywell Building Solutions. I've also got Yasir Sheikh here, who runs one of our global Honeywell Building Operations Centers, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later on in this session. But we have a lot to cover in a short space of time, so I think we're just going to get straight into it and carry on through to the next slide. Okay, so I think that it's important when we're talking about anything to do with post-occupancy services or aftermarket services is the challenges to our industries that we face. And there are many of them, as you're probably aware. I think we're just going to focus on a couple of these and just to kind of set the scene as we go through this. And a couple of those ones that I'm going to look at is a typical, we always see a skill shortage in our building technologies industry right now. We have an aging workforce where, we have a lot of people come through the kind of apprenticeship schemes and how we can take those skill sets and start using them more and more and progressing through the kind of like the levels with our technicians, apprentices into facilities management team, directors and C-suites. And a lot of that expertise is kind of falling out of our industry right now, and we're not getting the pull through of people coming into it. So that's one of the big kind of key challenges we're seeing across our industry right now. Another one I'm just going to touch on as well is this concept of digital transformation. It's a term that gets used a lot around our industry right now, and I think it's more around using the technology, as it says there, the innovation, and how we start to maybe move from doing things in a more manual way to a more digital way in the future. And we're going to touch on that a little bit in this presentation as well. On the other side of the coin, should we say, in terms of the challenges that we face, we're also seeing in our industry a bit of a move from being more of a servicing and maintenance being seen as a sort of a box ticking exercise where we've completed it, we've done what we needed to do, it's working, and how it is progressing on the side of those kind of like on whether we've completed that service tasking or not. We're seeing this move to really more of an outcome-based kind of approach to these aftermarket services. So we're looking at taking that building data and using it that we can get from these building technology systems and using them for strategic decisions, for instance. We're looking at how we can look at achieving these outcomes that customers are interested in from those kind of things that you see on the right-hand side of the slide, from energy efficiency and sustainability, resilience that we've got within, making sure our buildings are running, there's continuity there, the disaster recovery element, all these different things that we've got coming through as an outcome that our customers want to achieve, as well as the initial reasoning for having that servicing and maintenance, which is around compliance as well, and making sure that things are running. So we're definitely seeing more of the building environment, the building security and safety is actually now helping to either become a selling point for the organization, whether it be to external customers or to the staff and the occupants that are going to be inside those buildings. And there's an awful big shift towards that kind of more outcome-driven kind of approach to post-occupancy or aftermarket services that we're talking about. So let's see if we can move on to the next slide here. So what does this mean in the future? And again, seeing as we've got a sort of a shorter session today, we just wanted to kind of have one slide that tried to sum that up in where we believe this the future of our aftermarket services is moving. So as I said previously, in the kind of like the outcomes and the requirements that we're seeing across our industry right now, typically a building, whether it has been serviced or not, is almost like, as I said, a box tick. It's a yes, no. Yes, I've done this servicing. What we're looking at, sort of happening over the next sort of 12, 36 months, 1 to 3 years, and probably even longer as well in some situations, is we're moving to a more data-driven kind of performance indicator around the performance of these buildings. So rather than saying, yes, I've done this servicing, there'll be, has the servicing achieved our level of comfort within a building, whether it be temperature, humidity, indoor air quality, all these different things that impact how comfortable our building occupants are, whether they're working in warehousing, whether they're in offices, retail, infrastructure, logistics, airports. There's always a different requirement, and that comfort may change, and it may change per zones, but there's this kind of big drive to looking at how do our buildings perform and how do we maintain that level of kind of optimum comfort levels. Now, one that we're all very familiar with is energy consumption. have we got an ability to, got a slide going forward. Sorry, can we just move back a slide? Thank you. So yeah, so energy consumption is another key performance indicator that we've got where we're obviously, if we're looking at saving energy, sustainability goals, carbon neutral, these will all be things that will be tied into our service contracts in the future and maintenance contracts. And like we said, the expansion of a service contract from being just a compliance box tick, it's going to be how does that aftermarket service contract support our key performance indicators and these kind of energy goals and sustainability goals that we get. And then there's other things like asset availability, which is linked to our downtime we're trying to reduce within our buildings. What assets, what hardware, what HVAC plant, the heating, ventilation, and control, what fire detection systems are available, which is key to life safety, what access control systems are available. These are always things that are going to be part of an ongoing maintenance regime, as well as how is my building performing as we move through. And then on a service case performance, I think we're really looking at introducing kind of performance metrics and ways of tracking how many calls am I getting about my building, like facilities management calls, how many breakdowns do I get, how many fixes do I employ? This is another way of looking at whether or not our servicing is being done within our industry correctly and how we're using this to kind of track the success, I guess, that we're having working towards those outcomes that we talked about earlier. And if we look at these as a holistic piece, this is like transforming our delivery models. So we know we're shifting from maybe the hourly, have I had somebody on site and do something, to actually what has the impact been of that to our building and how are we tracking that and how is that going to help me achieve those outcomes that we talked about. So if we keep in mind we have delivery models that look like they're going to be evolving over the next few years as we move through this journey, then we can start looking at the technology section, which is the one below that. And these are things like anomaly detection, where we're looking and identifying where there are issues either going to happen or happening. So this is like the fault diagnostics that we're trying to to tweak and enhance throughout our industry across all these different systems. This then ties into technician guidance, like how do we kind of have the help guidance through kind of technicians, as you said, if our skills shortage within our industry and we have to try and backfill some of that expertise with technology. How do we use, kind of like a video guided kind of AI style kind of like kind of views of the system to help our technicians that are out trying to help resolve problems, maybe optimize systems. Those kind of things need to be picked up. We also have things like the subtle issue discovery. It's very obvious when something big breaks in a building. If you can't get into your front door because the access control system has stopped working, or it's very cold or very hot in a building because the heating and cooling systems have stopped working. But there are other smaller things that can influence those KPIs that are only going to be spotted by looking at data and understanding data. And then the final kind of like the kind of like the gold at the end of the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, or the cherry on top of the ice cream sundae, is the concept of self-healing systems. So this is where we're identifying an issue. We have a good, 90% we're certain within the system kind of situation that this will resolve that problem. Then we should be doing that automatically within the system. And again, we have been doing some of this throughout our industry over the last few years, and we've had systems that detect outside air temperature, notice that it's getting cooler and the temperature's dropping throughout the winter period. We need to bring our heating systems on earlier to try and compensate for that, so the building is at the optimum temperature when it becomes occupied, if it's an office or a retail environment. But that should be going one step further in the future and trying to resolve some of these issues through the system itself without any intervention at all. And then if we move on to the final two sections in the technology, real-time analytics have been around, or near real-time analytics have been around in our industry for a very long period of time. We've been doing a lot of work with analytics and talking about analytics in our industries on every aspect for a long time. What we will be looking to do, I think, over in the very near future is taking that to the next level and trying to add in the so what, the assets into that. Analytics is not a magic wand that you can have analytics and suddenly all your problems disappear. You need to have action, you need to have insight leading to something happening to solve that problem. And therefore you need to have people or systems making those changes or having an influence to try and, address whatever's been picked up. So I think some of the elements there will be asset monitoring will be increased over the years, to come. The dynamic tasking, so we're truly doing condition-based maintenance and condition-based investigations. We're not looking at systems that are, working adequately well, perfectly well. We're looking at those ones that are causing issues, having problems. And some of this is as well is to kind of combat that skill shortage that we're going to be seeing getting probably even worse in our industry moving forward. We're looking at, what impact can remote have? What impact can remote servicing have here in, remote kind of investigations, diagnostics, and those kind of elements can play within our building technology industry. And then the final piece of the puzzle is connectivity. I noticed the other day when I looked at my mobile phone, that I've now got 5G plus signal. I have no idea what 5G plus means in terms of that, the benefits over 5G. But I do remember the days when we had 2G connections, and now we're up to 5G connections, and probably in 2 years' time we'll be at 6G, 7G, and these connections are always getting quicker. They're getting more reliable. They're getting more easier to deploy and provide that connectivity. And we are getting the technology now to try and support that true Internet of Things that we've been talking about for years within our industry, and actually getting connectivity down to the sensor, down to that level of granularity within our buildings. But with that comes obviously the added pressure of cybersecurity. We need to start protecting our assets, our buildings, our organizations more and more. And obviously there is that kind of, one step ahead of the bad actors in this world. It is where this kind of future is going to be going to within our industry. And then the final thing that kind of ties this together is the cloud computing element. We do have obviously already, everybody's aware of the cloud, and, in our day-to-day lives, we have streaming systems and those kind of things like Netflix and Disney Plus and Hulu and all these other sorts of services that have kind of popped up and have started to replace the need to have DVD libraries in our houses to watch films whenever we wanted to. This type of kind of other sort of industry streams is going to start influencing the more traditional streams like the building technologies market, where a lot of our situations, our solutions, our software will become more and more intrinsically linked to the cloud, and obviously connectivity becomes a big piece of that. So when we take these things together, the delivery models, the technology, when those two combine, we kind of get this concept of digitalization. This is where we start looking at using technology, using the data, using different models to actually then drive our maintenance and our service regimes to actually deliver those benefits that maybe we weren't getting from the more traditional way of servicing and maintaining our buildings. And then those added value elements as well. So, the benefits on the right of this screen, the OpEx is the more traditional, reducing maintenance costs, reducing energy costs. These were always something that maintenance regimes did, but now it's going to be above and beyond. Now we're looking at, well, how does this impact revenue streams? Having a perfect environment in a retail space is going to make people want to spend more time there. Traditionally, then they'll spend more money with those organizations. If you think about those passengers that have choices of airports, there will always be a favorite airport of everybody just because they liked that experience more. Now, if the building technologies can actually help with that, with the environment, with the security element, with the the fact that they always feel secure because of the CCTV and the fire life safety systems, these are always going to give a much better experience, and that will obviously impact on the revenue of that organization. Reputation as well is another thing that is going to be obviously helped by having those spaces that are nicer for people to be in, and more, talking about to other peers and other friends and people they know that, oh, I had a really good experience in these different organizations because of X, Y, Z. And these are the things that you're going to start getting from the service contracts rather than just the traditional compliance and OpEx. So if we can just move on to the next slide. So again, I think what we're sort of seeing here and what we're trying to allude to is that, when we start moving to this more future of service, this more digitized and modernized approach around our industry, as well as those kind of additional value adds that we'll be getting from our aftermarket services, we're going to be improving those things around our traditional servicing. So if we can start connecting things remotely, if we can start introducing some of those smarter solutions to identify issues earlier, then we could be minimizing those response times. time to fix breakdowns, repeat site visits, truck rolls to site. These are all things that our industry is looking to reduce, and again, that's never going to change moving forward. Reducing building risks. Obviously, that's one of the big things about maintaining the technology and the systems, is to make sure they don't fail when you least want them to. And so this will always continue to be something that, as technology advances, we will start to reduce that risk year on year, because of the way that we can start monitoring things. And then the final thing that we've been doing that we're looking to improve is improving their operational efficiency. Now, we may help with lowering energy consumption of the buildings, because you're maintaining things better, you're policing systems, you're ensuring that settings are maintained in the building management system world. You're reducing the need to train people, because it's intuitive, it's easy for people to pick up. They don't need to have degrees and 10 years experience to do things, because everything is there for them. And this is something that technology and digitization will help more and more in the future. So there's a lot of benefits we can bring to that. So I think that, that's kind of like where we believe the future is going to go. I think that what we're kind of looking at now is that we're all on this journey together. There's the market itself, customers, end users, building operators, contractors, vendors, suppliers. We're all on this journey together of where we are now, where we think we need to be, and where we want to go, and how we're going to get from A to B. And Honeywell is no different in that. So, we are currently, looking at how do we take our traditional service models and move to a more asset-based, KPI-driven. And we're introducing new offerings such as our building performance service contracts to actually start that journey and move from just more on-site kind of calendar-based planned maintenance to more condition-based, remote-led, predictive kind of service offerings. And again, we're not in the self-learning, the self-healing kind of area right now. We're not in that whole kind of like the vision of where we're going, but that's where we want to get to. And so we understand that we need to change, as well as our market needs to change, to actually meet those customer needs. So we've started this journey. We're moving to this kind of approach. One of the key pieces here is this HBOC concept, which is our Honeywell Building Operations Center. So I think if we just move to the next slide, Emily, and then what we'll do is, if Yasir, you want to come off and cover this slide and have a conversation about how the HBOC is going to help customers and how we see it moving to the future, that'd be excellent.
Thank you, Paul. Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. So Honeywell Building Operations Center is a 24/7 engineering team. What this team does is provide proactive and reactive engineering support for BMS and HVAC connected customers. For proactive support, we monitor sites, HVAC systems, BMS systems proactively for any critical and non-critical alarms. And if any alarm comes in, the engineer will go into the site, do diagnostics, resolve the issue, and send a completed report to the customer. In scenarios which is very little, where we cannot resolve any issues, we get one of our field engineer to go and attend the site. What this has done, this has reduced the number of customer interaction points for problem identification to resolution, where somebody will identify the problem after some time, then they're going to sort of make a call to a support team, then the engineer is going to try and establish what the issue is, and then send a engineer to the site. So this has all been reduced to reduce the number of interaction points from problem identification to resolution. What we also do is we provide analytics on a routine faults. So if an alarm keeps on coming back again and again, we'll run at that point through our analytics engine. We go back to the customer with a detailed breakdown of why this alarm has been occurring and what needs to be done about that site. Paul, do you want to sort of go anything else?
Yeah, and I think, thank you for that, Yasser. And I think that, as you can see, we're taking, in the top example that Yasser walked through, there's a lot of touch points, there's a lot of kind of time that could be wasted between things happening. When we start adding in that technology element, when we start adding in that new way of looking at the KPIs and those kind of things, and then enabling the actual action through this Honeywell Building Operations Center team, it really does start to reduce down those kind of like those areas where we could see a delay in responding. And again, if you start thinking about maybe it could be a simple as a too hot, too cold call, but it could be something that's linked to one of the, I don't know, indoor air quality sensors that we've got a problem that we need to start reacting to. Otherwise, we're seeing, you know, a drop in kind of environmental quality for those kind of building occupants. So it can really, you can really see how that kind of combining of those two technologies and KPIs can actually help deliver that kind of digitization and modernization of our service contracts. So that's excellent. Thank you, Yassir, for that. So if we want to move on to the next slide, because I think we're getting towards the end and we wanted to leave enough kind of time for any questions that anybody's got as we've gone through this. And I think we've got a couple come in that I can see already. So I think just to kind of quickly review, so we get a few minutes towards the end. Like I said, it's a short session today. We just wanted to kind of get some of the kind of concepts out there and where we believe this is going in our place. So I think we definitely need to start looking at the challenges that we face in our market. There is definitely a skill shortage. We've got some financial uncertainty around the markets at the moment that, you know, that we never seem to know where it's going at the moment. There's lots of technology out there that we could use. Should we be using it? How do we use it? That's where, you know, we need to kind of be the way that we can bring this technology together is what Honeywell does best, is a technology company. And then also it's where do you start? You know, there's so many things you could do. Where do you start as your journey on, and where are you on that journey to find? So I think that's one of the things that is a good challenge to the marketplace. We then looked at the future kind of service models, the way it's kind of moving from more of a yes, I've done my service to, well, actually, what did that mean to my business? How did that help me achieve those outcomes? My carbon, you know, neutral goal of carbon zero, you know, by 2030, 2035. How does my contracts, my service contracts, my aftermarket services align with where I want to achieve that? Or if I want to become the you know the best environment and get maybe well kind of certification or LEED certification, how do I achieve that, and how does my service contracts and my maintenance contracts help me do that? The remote first element that Yassir talked about, you know, we're seeing a huge transition at the moment towards that, to try and remove the need for those truck rolls to site, or to replace some of the on-site knowledge that we just don't have anymore within our industry. And you know, everybody's finding it hard to find these experts. The predictive maintenance and self-healing systems, these are, you know, sci-fi things 10 years ago, and now they're starting to become real. I think what's the challenge for us as a manufacturer and as a supplier and a vendor is, how do we make that realistic? How do we make that so it actually delivers true action that helps you achieve your outcomes? And then, like I said, where we are on this journey right now is we're making this journey alongside you. You know, we're you know, hopefully a few steps ahead. And we're looking at, you know, how we can utilize this technology, the remote sensors we've got around the world that can help, you know, remotely enable these types of outcomes and those kind of things. So we're really pushing towards those kind of solutions that are aligned with the outcomes. So I think that's just a very kind of quick summary on where we were throughout this session today. I'm going to stop kind of into the presenting stuff and see if there's any questions we've got, and I can see a couple we're going to go through. So if we just kind of go to the next slide while we kind of deal with some of the questions, Emily, that would be awesome. And so you can just see some information about who we are as Honeywell Building Solutions. So I think Yassir, I'll you know, see what you've got thoughts on any of these questions as well. So the good people here are not just hearing my dulcet tones. So I think that we've had a kind of question come in, which is, and actually I'll start with you actually. So, you know, the concept of remote sensors, I think this question is asking about, why don't organizations actually set up their own HBox, their own remote sensors? So have you got any thoughts on why, you know, customers are not doing this, and why it's probably a more easier to kind of outsource, I guess, that sort of solution?
I think the simple answer to that, Paul, is these are very expensive to run. You need to have all the equation to meet up. You need to have the right level of skill set. You need to have scale, and you need to have a volume coming in. And I think a lot of organizations have tried that and then given up the idea. As a manufacturer, Honeywell is best placed to provide that sort of service. We have got centers in Mexico, US, UK, India, Dubai, Saudi Arabia, and in Australia, which allows us to sort of use our collective skills and deliver a complete 24/7 across the globe. So I think the smartest answer is that it's very expensive for smaller companies to operate a 24/7 engineering service.
And I guess that with the sort of setting up of those centers, I guess there's a lot of redundancy backups and,
Yeah.
you know, I guess thinking about, you know, power, network connections, all of those kind of things, all of some things you have to think about as well, which obviously is just added kind of additional not resource and cost to those.
100%, Paul.
Okay.
So in terms of infrastructure, you need dual redundancy. So yeah, the centers, while they work as a daisy chain, they are also designed to operate at silo centers. Then the other element which adds into the complexity is the data export. So a lot of regions have restrictions on the data being moved from the region. So how you access and manage data, we need to be sort of mindful and work on the compliance aspect. 100%, Paul.
Okay. No, thank you for that. Okay, let's move on to another one here. So there's one here that talks about so analytics, as I said earlier, has been around for a while. It seems to be lots of people were talking about it 5-10 years ago. What happened, I think, was the question here. I think it's alluding to is why did it not kind of pick up? Why did it not get traction? So I think that, you know, from my side, I'm going to kind of kick this off, and then Yasir, you can add into this. I think analytics is a great thing. Like I said earlier, it's definitely not a magic wand that you can just deploy and suddenly the world is a better place and all your problems disappear. And I think that a lot of the analytics systems that I've seen deployed in my time in the industry, which is over 20 years now, a lot of the time they are installed. They are expected to solve things automatically and without any, you know, customer interaction or supplier, vendor, subject matter expert kind of interaction. I think that's really hurt the analytics piece because the insight is there. I just don't, people do not think that they can, you know, they have to do anything. There's no action to be taken. And again, without any action taken on the back of an insight, nothing changes. And it's just the status quo is maintained and the balance of there'll always be a problem. So I think we've definitely got some potentials where adding in that remote aspect, potentially the technology being able to help guide people that maybe don't have the experience to know when something is going wrong and is told, here's a problem, they don't know what to do with it. And I think that's really, you know, hurt that kind of analytics piece. But we definitely have seen benefits within our service provisions that we use analytics with to get early warning, also to actually get a lot more, you know, coverage. Because if you think about if you have a subject matter expert on site for 10 hours a day, 8 hours a day, 12 hours a day, the other 12 hours of that day, there is no expert looking at your site. Analytics can be looked at as being an expert of identifying where those problems are. It's not so good at the moment in terms of fixing it. Somebody has to still go fix those issues and investigate those issues. So once that loop has been closed, I think that the analytics piece will see a lot more value because it's the insight and then the action needs to come along. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that, Yasir, while you're sort of with me.
I think, Paul, I completely agree with you. And I think that the other thing just to add to that is the lack of standardization. So I think in buildings industry, we are lacking behind on standardization. Buildings are set up differently. And this is where, as leaders in remote services, we are working in bringing standardization to those sites so that the AI engine can perform better, and we can use normalized performance indices to make assessments on this is how the building should be run. But Paul, you have covered it up. Thank you, mate.
No worries at all. Okay, so there's a couple more, but what we'll do is we'll, as we're at the top of the half an hour for the session, and we know that everybody's got busy lives to get back to, we're going to answer those kind of to the details. So if registration details, we'll get back to those people directly and let them know. So with that, I thank you very much for your time today and staying with us and listening to us. And Emily, I'm going to basically pass it back to you, I believe, so you can close off the call.
Thanks everyone for joining. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you very much, everybody. Take care.